The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, crisp and white against the stack of overdue bills that Amelia Lancaster had been avoiding for 3 days. She stood in her cramped apartment kitchen, coffee growing cold in her hand as she stared at the return address from Children's Hope Foundation. Her fingers trembled as she tore it open, already knowing what it would say but needing to see the words anyway. Donation received. Amount, $50,000. Donor, anonymous, $50,000. The exact amount needed to fund the pediatric wing renovation at the community center where she volunteered every weekend, teaching art to kids who otherwise would never hold a paintbrush. She had written about it in her blog, posted about it on social media, made videos explaining why it mattered. The building was old, paint peeling, the ceiling leaked when it rained, and the kids deserved better. She had never expected anyone to actually listen, let alone contribute such an enormous sum. Amelia read the letter 3 times, searching for any clue about who had done this. Nothing. Just the word anonymous in bold letters where a name should be. She set the letter down on her counter and picked up her phone, immediately calling the foundation. "I need to thank them," she said to the woman who answered, her voice urgent. "Whoever donated, I need to know who they are." "I'm sorry, Miss Lancaster. Anonymous means anonymous. We have strict policies about donor privacy. But this is life-changing. This is going to help so many children. I understand, but we cannot disclose that information. I'm sure whoever donated knows the impact they're making." Amelia hung up feeling both elated and frustrated. Someone out there had given her the means to change everything, and she couldn't even say thank you properly. She spent the rest of the morning trying to work on her freelance graphic design projects, but her mind kept wandering back to the donation. Who had that kind of money just lying around? Who cared enough about a struggling community center to hand over $50,000 without wanting recognition? 3 days later, she was at the foundation's office picking up paperwork when she overheard 2 staff members talking in the hallway. "Did you see the Irwin donation came through?" The anonymous one. "Yeah, Rebecca was saying Mr. Irwin always does that, never wants his name on anything. Must be nice to have that kind of money to throw around." Amelia's heart stopped. Irwin. She had a name now. She stood frozen behind the door, listening as they continued talking about some gala event and moved on to other topics. As soon as they left, she hurried to her car and pulled out her phone, typing Irwin Donation Charity into the search bar. The results flooded her screen. Richard Irwin, CEO of Irwin Construction Group, one of the largest commercial building companies in the state. She clicked on image results and her breath caught. He was younger than she expected, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and serious eyes that stared out from corporate headshots. Every article mentioned his company's success, his business acumen, his tendency to avoid the spotlight despite his wealth. Several mentioned anonymous donations to various causes, though none confirmed specific amounts. This was him. She knew it in her bones. Richard Irwin had given her $50,000 and wanted nothing in return, not even a thank you. Something about that felt wrong to her. Everyone deserved acknowledgement for kindness, especially kindness of this magnitude. She found his company address easily enough. Irwin Construction Group occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown high-rise. Amelia stared at the address on her phone screen for a full minute before making a decision that was either brave or incredibly stupid. She was going to thank him in person. The next morning, she dressed in her best business casual outfit, a navy blue dress that she usually reserved for client meetings, and drove downtown. Her hands were sweating on the steering wheel. This was crazy. She was about to walk into a billionaire's office unannounced because she had accidentally overheard his name. He would probably have her thrown out. Or worse, he might be angry that his anonymity had been compromised, but she had to try. The image of those kids' faces when they saw the renovated space, when they had proper lighting and clean walls and a roof that didn't leak, kept playing in her mind. Someone had made that possible, and she refused to let it go unacknowledged. The Irwin construction building was all glass and steel, intimidating in its modern perfection. Amelia walked through the revolving doors into a lobby that was bigger than her entire apartment. Marble floors, contemporary art on the walls, a reception desk that looked like it cost more than her car. "Can I help you?" The receptionist was polished and professional, eyeing Amelia with the kind of assessment that said she knew exactly how much everyone's clothes cost. "I'm here to see Richard Irwin." "You have an appointment?" "No, but it's important. It's about a donation." The receptionist's expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. "Mr. Irwin is very busy. If you'd like to leave a message, I can pass it along." "I need to see him personally. Please, just 5 minutes." "I'm sorry, but without an appointment that's not possible." Amelia felt her determination wavering but pushed forward. "Can you at least tell him that Amelia Lancaster is here about the Children's Hope Foundation?" The receptionist sighed but picked up her phone, speaking in low tones. Amelia couldn't hear what was being said, but she saw the woman's eyebrows raise slightly. After a moment, she hung up. "Mr. Irwin's assistant will be down in a moment." Victory felt premature, but at least she hadn't been immediately escorted out. Amelia waited, shifting her weight from foot to foot, rehearsing what she would say. "Thank you seemed too small. Your generosity changed everything sounded dramatic. Maybe she should have written a letter instead." A woman in a sharp gray suit emerged from the elevators, walking toward Amelia with purposeful strides. She was probably in her 50s, with gray streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Lancaster, I'm Patricia, Mr. Irwin's executive assistant. I understand you're here about a donation." "Yes. I know he probably wanted to remain anonymous, and I'm sorry for showing up like this, but I had to thank him in person. What he did for the community center for those kids, it's going to change lives." Patricia studied her for a long moment, and Amelia couldn't read her expression. "Finally," she said, "follow me." They rode the elevator to the 23rd floor in silence. Amelia's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Patricia could hear it. The doors opened onto a space that was somehow both luxurious and understated. More glass, more clean lines, but also warm wood and soft lighting that made it feel less cold than the lobby. Patricia led her down a hallway and stopped outside a large office door. "Wait here a moment." She disappeared inside, and Amelia could hear muffled voices. She tried not to panic. Maybe he was calling security. Maybe she had completely overstepped and was about to be banned from the building. Then the door opened, and Patricia gestured her inside. "Mr. Irwin will see you." The office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the entire city. But Amelia barely noticed, because standing behind a massive desk was Richard Irwin, and he looked even more imposing in person than in his photos. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, like he had been running his hands through it, and those serious eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her mouth go dry. "Miss Lancaster," he said, and his voice was deeper than she had imagined. "Please sit down." Amelia sat in one of the leather chairs across from his desk, suddenly very aware of how out of place she was. This man built skyscrapers. She designed logos for small businesses. "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced," she began, words tumbling out in a rush. I know you wanted to stay anonymous, and I promise I didn't go looking for your name. I overheard it accidentally, and I tried to forget about it, but I couldn't. What you did, giving that money to the foundation, it's going to change everything for those kids. They deserve to have a space that's safe and beautiful, and you made that possible. I just needed to say thank you." Richard was quiet for a moment, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Then he leaned back in his chair slightly. "How did you find out it was me?" "I overheard some staff members at the foundation talking. They didn't know I was there. I'm really sorry. I know this probably defeats the whole purpose of an anonymous donation." "It does, somewhat." But he didn't sound angry. If anything, there was something almost amused in his tone. "Though I appreciate your persistence. I just couldn't let it go without saying thank you properly." "You didn't have to do that. Most people wouldn't. Most people don't have the resources to help. I do, so I should." He said it matter-of-factly, like giving away $50,000 was as simple as buying coffee. "Still," Amelia insisted, "it matters. What you did matters. Those kids, they don't have much. Some of them come from really difficult situations. The art classes I teach there, it's sometimes the only good thing in their week. And now they'll have a space that reflects how important they are, how much their creativity and their dreams matter." Something shifted in Richard's expression, a softening around his eyes. "You teach art there?" "Every Saturday and Sunday. I'm a graphic designer during the week, but the teaching is what I really love. Watching kids discover they can make something beautiful, that they have something valuable to express, it's everything." Richard stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. "My mother was an art teacher," he said quietly. "Elementary school. She used to bring home stories about her students, especially the ones who struggled. She always said art gave them a voice when they didn't have words. She sounds wonderful, she was. Past tense. Amelia heard the weight of it. She passed away when I was 16, cancer. I'm so sorry." He turned back to face her, and there was something vulnerable in his expression now, something that made him seem less like an untouchable CEO and more like a person carrying old grief. "She would have loved what you're doing at that community center. That's actually why I donated. I saw your blog post, the photos of the kids with their paintings, the way you wrote about giving them space to be themselves. It reminded me of her." Amelia felt her throat tighten. "That's beautiful. She'd be proud of you carrying on what she believed in." "I build buildings, Miss Lancaster. Mostly commercial properties, office spaces, things that make money. My mother taught children to see beauty in the world. I'm not sure those things are comparable." "You're wrong." Amelia stood, moved by a sudden need to make him understand. "You used what you built, literally, to give those kids something beautiful. You took your success and turned it into art supplies and safe spaces and opportunities. That's exactly what your mother did, just in a different way." Richard looked at her for a long moment, and Amelia felt heat rise in her cheeks under his gaze. There was something magnetic about him, something that went beyond his obvious wealth and success. He carried himself with quiet confidence, but there was also a loneliness in his eyes that she recognized because she saw it in her own mirror sometimes. "Would you like to see the plans?" he asked suddenly. "For the renovation? You have plans already." "I own a construction company, Miss Lancaster. When I donate to a building project, I make sure it's done right." He walked back to his desk and pulled out a large folder, spreading architectural drawings across the surface. "I had my team draw these up last week. I was planning to send them to the foundation tomorrow." Amelia moved closer, looking down at the detailed drawings. They were incredible. New lighting, reinforced ceiling, expanded classroom spaces, even a small gallery area where the kids could display their work. "This is more than $50,000 of work," she said, running her finger along the gallery space outline. The donation covers materials. My company will handle the labor. She looked up at him, stunned. Why would you do that? Because it matters, he said simply, echoing her earlier words. Because those kids deserve it, and because maybe some small part of my mother's passion lives on through this. Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. You're remarkable. Richard's expression shifted, something almost shy crossing his features. I'm just a man with resources trying to use them well. No, Amelia said firmly. You're someone who sees past your own world to make someone else's better. That's rare. They stood there on opposite sides of his desk, the plans spread between them, and Amelia felt something shift in the air. This wasn't just a thank you anymore. This was a connection, unexpected and powerful. Would you want to be involved in the design process? Richard asked. You know the kids know what they need. It would be helpful to have your input. Really, really. We could meet weekly to go over progress, make adjustments, if you have time. Amelia knew she should be cautious. This man was essentially a stranger, albeit one who had just funded her dream project. But something in her chest was pulling her toward yes, toward more time in his presence, toward discovering what else lay beneath his serious exterior. I'd love that, she said. Richard smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face, and Amelia's heart did something complicated in her chest. Patricia will set up a meeting for next week. We can go over the timeline, discuss any specific needs you have. Thank you for all of this, for caring. Thank you for showing up at my office door anyway, Richard said, and there was warmth in his voice now. Even though you weren't supposed to know it was me. Amelia laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. I've never been great at following rules. I'm beginning to see that. Patricia appeared at the door, professional as ever. Your 2 o'clock is here, Mr. Irwin. Thank you, Patricia. Miss Lancaster was just leaving. Amelia gathered her things, suddenly reluctant to go. The office felt different now, warmer, full of possibility. As she walked toward the door, Richard called out, Miss Lancaster, she turned. Please call me Amelia. Amelia. The way he said her name sent a shiver down her spine. I'm glad you came, me too. She left the building walking on air, replaying every moment of their conversation. The way he had talked about his mother, the vulnerability in his eyes, the passion in his voice when he discussed the renovation plans. Richard Irwin was not what she had expected. He was better. The week until their next meeting crawled by. Amelia threw herself into her design work, but her mind kept wandering to those architectural plans, to the gallery space, to Richard's smile. She told herself she was just excited about the project, about finally giving those kids the space they deserved. But late at night, lying in bed, she admitted the truth. She was thinking about him, about the way his presence had filled that office, about the grief he carried for his mother, about the gentleness beneath his serious exterior. When Saturday arrived, she drove to the community center for her usual classes, but everything felt different now. The kids noticed immediately. Miss Amelia, why are you so smiley? Asked 7-year-old Marcus, paint already somehow in his hair despite only being there for 5 minutes. I have good news, she announced to the group of 12 children gathered around the art tables. We're going to get a new space. New paint, new lights, even a special gallery where we can show your artwork. The kids erupted in cheers and questions. Amelia spent the rest of the class fielding inquiries about when it would happen and whether they could pick the paint colors. She took photos of their excitement, their paint-covered hands raised in celebration, and later that night, she posted about it on her blog. Sunday morning, her phone rang with an unknown number. Hello, Amelia, it's Richard. Richard Irwin. Her heart jumped. Hi, how did you get my number? You filled out contact information with Patricia when you scheduled our meeting. I hope that's all right. I just read your blog post about telling the kids. Their reactions were wonderful. You read my blog. I've been reading it since before the donation. That's how I found out about the project in the first place, remember? Amelia sat down on her couch, processing this. Richard Irwin, CEO and millionaire, had been regularly reading her little blog about art classes for underprivileged kids. I don't know what to say. You write beautifully about them, about art, about creativity, about why it matters. It's compelling. Thank you. That means a lot. There was a pause, and then Richard said, I was wondering if you'd like to meet before our official meeting this week, maybe over coffee. I had some ideas I wanted to run by you in a less formal setting. Amelia's pulse quickened. Like a business coffee, another pause. Sure. Business. But something in his tone suggested it might be more than that, and Amelia found herself hoping it was. I'd like that. When? Tomorrow. There's a cafe near your apartment if that's convenient. Common Grounds. That's my usual spot. How did you know where I live? Your address is on the foundation paperwork. I promise I'm not being creepy, just efficient. Amelia laughed. Tomorrow works. What time? 9. Perfect. After she hung up, Amelia sat staring at her phone. A coffee meeting. That was normal, professional. Except it was scheduled for a Monday morning, and his voice had held something warmer than pure professionalism. She tried not to read too much into it, but she spent an hour that night picking out what to wear, which was definitely not normal behavior for a business meeting. Monday morning, she arrived at Common Grounds 15 minutes early, ordered her usual vanilla latte, and claimed a table by the window. She had brought a notebook with ideas for the renovation, trying to maintain the pretense that this was purely business. Richard arrived exactly at 9, and Amelia's breath caught. He was wearing jeans and a navy sweater instead of his usual business attire, looking somehow more approachable but no less impressive. He ordered black coffee and joined her at the table. Good morning, he said, and that smile was back, the one that transformed his face. Morning. You look different out of the office. I could say the same, though I've only seen you in that blue dress. He had noticed what she wore. Amelia felt warmth spread through her chest. I promise I own other clothes. I'm glad to hear it. Richard pulled out his own notebook, but he didn't open it immediately. Instead, he looked at her directly, those serious eyes holding hers. I have a confession to make. Okay. I didn't really need to meet before our official meeting. I just wanted to see you again. Amelia's heart was pounding now. Oh. I hope that's all right. If I'm overstepping, please tell me. But when you left my office last week, I realized I wanted more time to talk to you. Not about renovations or donations, just to talk. You're not overstepping, Amelia said softly. I wanted to see you again, too. The relief on Richard's face was genuine. I'm not usually this forward. I spend most of my time working, building things, managing projects. I don't really do the whole personal connection thing very well. You're doing fine so far. Am I? He leaned back in his chair, cradling his coffee. I keep worrying I'm going to say the wrong thing. You walked into my office and turned everything upside down, Amelia. I've been thinking about you constantly. I've been thinking about you too, she admitted. I told myself it was just excitement about the project, but that's not entirely true. What is it then? Amelia considered her words carefully. You surprised me. I expected some distant CEO writing checks to feel good about himself. Instead, I found someone who genuinely cares, who carries his mother's memory in everything he does, who sees the value in giving kids a space to create. You're not what I expected at all. Is that good or bad? It's definitely good. They talked for 2 hours, coffee growing cold as the conversation flowed from topic to topic. Richard told her about growing up watching his mother teach, about how her death had driven him to succeed, to build something that would make her proud. Amelia shared stories about her own childhood, about discovering art in middle school and realizing it was the first thing she had ever been truly good at. "Why graphic design instead of fine art?" Richard asked. "Practicality. Fine art doesn't pay bills. But design lets me still be creative while earning a living, and then I get the teaching on weekends, which feeds my soul." "You shouldn't have to choose between paying bills and feeding your soul," says the millionaire, Amelia teased gently. Richard's expression turned serious. "I wasn't always wealthy. My father was a carpenter. We lived modestly. After Mom died, I worked construction through high school and college to help with bills. I know what it's like to worry about money." "How did you build all this then?" "Hard work, smart investments, a lot of luck. I started my own small construction company at 25, took on projects other companies wouldn't touch, built a reputation for quality and reliability. The company grew faster than I expected. By 30, I was hiring people instead of swinging hammers myself." "That's impressive." "It's also lonely," Richard said quietly. "Success came with a price. I lost friends who thought I changed. Dating became complicated because people wanted my money more than they wanted me. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense." Amelia reached across the table and touched his hand. "I don't want your money, Richard. I didn't even want to know you were the donor. I just wanted to say thank you." He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with hers. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. "I know. That's what makes this feel different. You saw past all of it to something real." "This is moving fast," Amelia said, though she didn't pull her hand away. Too fast, she thought about it honestly. They had known each other for less than a week. This should feel rushed and reckless. But somehow it just felt right. No, not too fast, just unexpected. The best things usually are. They finished their coffee and walked outside into the bright morning. Richard's car was parked down the street, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Amelia made in a year. "Can I see you again?" Richard asked. "Outside of project meetings." "I'd like that. Dinner? Friday? Friday works." Richard lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. The gesture was old-fashioned and impossibly romantic, and Amelia felt her knees go weak. "Until Friday, then." She watched him drive away, still feeling the ghost of his lips on her skin. This was crazy. She was falling for someone she barely knew, someone whose world was so different from hers. But standing on that sidewalk, morning sun warm on her face, Amelia couldn't bring herself to care about the logic of it. Something real was happening between them, something worth exploring. The week passed in a blur. They texted constantly, silly messages throughout the day that made Amelia smile during client calls. Richard sent photos of his office with captions about how boring his meetings were. Amelia sent paint-covered selfies from the community center. Their official renovation meeting on Wednesday was professional, but charged with undercurrent awareness of each other. Patricia definitely noticed, raising an eyebrow when she caught them laughing together over the conference table. Friday arrived, and Amelia spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready. She chose an emerald green dress that brought out her eyes, styled her auburn hair in soft waves, and actually applied makeup beyond her usual mascara. When Richard picked her up at 7, the look on his face made all the effort worthwhile. "You're stunning," he said, standing in her apartment doorway looking unfairly handsome in a dark suit. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He took her to an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place Amelia had only read about in reviews. The host knew Richard by name and led them to a private table in the back, away from other diners. "You come here often?" Amelia asked, studying the menu with its conspicuous lack of prices, occasionally for business dinners. But this is different. This is the first time I've wanted to be here. The evening unfolded like something from a movie. They shared pasta and told stories, learning the small details that made them real to each other. Richard confessed he couldn't cook to save his life and lived mostly on takeout. Amelia admitted she was terrified of heights despite living on the third floor. They debated books and movies and discovered a shared love of old westerns. "My dad used to watch them every Sunday," Richard said. "After Mom died, it was one of the few things that could make him smile." "Is he still around?" "He passed 5 years ago. Heart attack. He was only 62. Amelia reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm sorry, you've lost a lot. It made me appreciate what I have. Every day is a gift, you know. I don't want to waste it building things that don't matter." "The community center matters." "It does, but so does this. Right here, right now, getting to know you. This matters too." After dinner, Richard drove her home but didn't immediately say goodbye. They sat in his car outside her building, talking until the windows fogged up. Finally, reluctantly, Amelia knew she had to go inside. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "It was perfect. Can I walk you up?" "Yes." They climbed the stairs slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. At her door, Amelia turned to face him, heart racing. Richard cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. "I'm going to kiss you now, if that's all right." "It's all right." His lips met hers softly at first, tentative, but when she responded, the kiss deepened. Amelia's hands found their way to his chest, feeling his heart pounding as hard as hers. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "That was worth waiting for," Richard murmured against her forehead. "Definitely worth it." He kissed her once more, quickly this time, then forced himself to step back. "I should go before I can't make myself leave. Text me when you get home." "I will." Amelia floated into her apartment and immediately called her best friend, Maya. "Tell me everything," Maya demanded the moment she answered. "I think I'm falling in love with him," Amelia said, the words spilling out. "Is that insane? It's been less than 2 weeks. Does it feel insane?" "No. It feels right, like everything just clicked into place." "Then maybe it's not insane, maybe it's just right." After they hung up, Amelia's phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Home safe. Already missing you." She texted back a heart emoji and fell asleep smiling. The next month was a dream. They saw each other constantly, fitting dates around work schedules and renovation meetings. Richard came to the community center one Saturday and spent the afternoon helping kids with their projects. Amelia watched him kneel beside Marcus, patiently explaining how to mix colors, and felt her heart expand. The renovation began in early November. Richard's crew arrived on a Monday morning and started tearing down old drywall. Amelia stopped by daily to check progress, but mostly to see Richard, who made a point of being on site whenever possible. They stole kisses behind paint tarps and made plans over sawdust-covered lunches. "When this is done," Richard said one afternoon, "I want to take you somewhere." "Where?" "It's a surprise, but pack a bag. We'll be gone for the weekend." "Mysterious. You like it." "I do." The community center transformation was remarkable. Within 3 weeks, the space was unrecognizable. Fresh white walls reflected new LED lighting, making everything bright and welcoming. The expanded classroom had proper storage for supplies, and the small gallery space had professional mounting systems for displaying artwork. On the last Saturday of November, they held an opening celebration. The kids arrived to find their renovated space complete, and their reactions made Amelia cry. Marcus ran from corner to corner, touching everything, unable to believe it was real. The parents who attended kept thanking Richard, who deflected credit to his crew and to Amelia's vision. After everyone left, Amelia and Richard stood alone in the new gallery space, surrounded by children's artwork hanging on pristine white walls. "Your mother would love this," Amelia said softly. "She would love you," Richard replied, pulling her close. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them. Amelia looked up at him, seeing vulnerability and hope in his eyes. "I love you too. I've been wanting to say it for weeks." He kissed her deeply, and in that moment, surrounded by art and possibility and the culmination of so much kindness, everything felt perfectly aligned. That night, Richard took her to his house for the first time. It was a modern structure in the hills, all windows and clean lines, with a view of the city that took her breath away. "I built it myself," he said, watching her explore. "Designed every detail. It's beautiful, very you." "Is it too much?" Amelia turned to face him. "Richard, I don't care about the house or the money or any of that. I care about you. The man who remembers his mother through kindness. The man who spends his Saturdays helping kids mix paint. That's who I love." Richard pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "I never expected you. I had resigned myself to a life of work and solitude. Then you showed up at my office door, refusing to let a good deed go unacknowledged, and everything changed. Best decision I ever made, tracking you down. Best violation of donor privacy I've ever experienced." They laughed, and then they weren't laughing anymore because he was kissing her again, and she was kissing back, and the house with its view and its careful design faded away until there was only this. Only them. December brought cold weather and holidays and deepening connection. Richard closed his office for a week between Christmas and New Year's, the first vacation he had taken in 5 years. They spent it mostly at his house, cooking together despite neither being particularly skilled, watching old westerns and talking about the future. "What do you want, Amelia?" Richard asked one night as they sat by his fireplace. "Long term, what does your ideal life look like?" She thought about it carefully. "I want to keep teaching. Maybe expand the program, reach more kids. I'd love to focus more on that than on freelance design work, and I want a family someday. Kids of my own. What about you?" "I want to build things that matter, not just office buildings for corporations, but spaces that serve communities. Schools, community centers, affordable housing. I want to use what I've built to make a real difference." He paused. "And I want to do it with someone who understands why it matters. Someone like you." "Are we really doing this?" Amelia asked. "Planning a future together after 2 months? Does the timeline matter if we're both certain? Are you certain?" Richard set down his wine glass and shifted to face her fully. "I am absolutely certain that you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. I'm certain that I want to wake up next to you every morning. I'm certain that when I think about my future, you're in every single vision." "So yes, Amelia, I'm certain." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm certain too." "Good." He pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her. "Then we'll figure out the details as we go." The new year arrived with possibility. In January, Amelia gave notice on her apartment and moved into Richard's house. It felt fast to everyone on the outside, but to them, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. She converted one of his spare rooms into a studio, and he loved coming home to find her covered in paint, working on pieces for the community center. The art program was thriving. With the new space complete, enrollment had doubled. Amelia hired 2 additional teachers and started offering classes during the week as well as weekends. Richard's company donated supplies quarterly, and word spread about the quality program happening at the little community center. In March, Richard proposed. He did it at the community center, after classes on a Saturday, surrounded by the kids who had brought them together in the first place. He got down on one knee in the gallery space, holding a ring that was elegant and understated, exactly Amelia's style. "You showed up at my office door when you weren't supposed to," he said, "and changed my entire life. Will you let me spend the rest of it showing up for you?" Amelia said yes through tears, and the kids cheered, and Marcus yelled that he had known they were going to get married because they looked at each other all mushy. They married in September, a small ceremony in the community center gallery, surrounded by artwork and the people who mattered most. Amelia wore a simple cream dress, and Richard wore a suit that matched his eyes. Instead of expensive flowers, the kids had created paper bouquets in every color imaginable. "We're here," the officiant began, "because sometimes the best things come from anonymous kindness being acknowledged anyway." Everyone laughed because the story of how they met had become famous among their friends and family. The woman who tracked down the anonymous donor and fell in love with him. It sounded like a fairy tale, but standing there making vows, Amelia knew it was so much better because it was real. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, exploring art museums and eating too much pasta and talking about dreams. Richard wanted to start a foundation focused on arts education. Amelia wanted to write a book about teaching creativity to children. They made plans and revised them and made new ones, secure in the knowledge that they had time to figure it all out. When they returned home, Richard surprised her with one more gift. He had purchased the building next to the community center and was donating it for expansion. "We can double the program," he explained, showing her the plans. "More classrooms, a proper gallery, maybe even a small theater for performances." "This is too much," Amelia protested, even as her heart soared. "It's not enough. It will never be enough to match what you've given me. You taught me that success isn't about what you build, but about why you build it. This is my why." The expansion took 6 months to complete. By spring of the following year, the center served over 200 kids weekly. Amelia's book proposal had been picked up by a publisher, and she was splitting her time between teaching, writing, and helping Richard plan the new foundation. In May, she found out she was pregnant. She told Richard on a Saturday afternoon at the center, pulling him into the storage closet that had become their unofficial hiding spot for stolen moments. "I'm having a baby," she blurted out. "We're having a baby." Richard's face went through several expressions before landing on pure joy. He lifted her up, spinning her around the cramped space. "We're having a baby. Are you happy?" "I'm ecstatic. Terrified, but ecstatic." They told the kids the following week, and Marcus immediately claimed he would teach the baby to paint. Other kids volunteered to share their supplies and offered advice on what babies liked. Their investment in Amelia and Richard's happiness was complete and genuine, and it reminded them both why this work mattered so much. The baby arrived in January, a girl with dark hair and her father's serious eyes. They named her Hope, after the foundation that had brought them together and the commodity they both believed in above all else. Richard cried when he held her for the first time, and Amelia knew he was thinking about his mother, wishing she could meet this new life they had created. "She would have adored her," Amelia whispered. "She would have adored you too." Hope grew up surrounded by art and love and possibility. By the time she was 2, she was attending classes at the community center, her tiny hands creating masterpieces that Richard proudly displayed in his office. The foundation was thriving, funding art programs in 12 communities across the state. Amelia's book had been published to excellent reviews, and she was working on a second. On a Tuesday morning in early spring, 5 years after that first envelope had arrived, Amelia stood in the community center gallery, watching Richard help a group of kids hang their latest works. Hope was on his shoulders, pointing to each piece and declaring them all beautiful. Marcus, now 12 and still devoted to their family, was directing the hanging with artistic authority. "Miss Amelia," a new student called out. She was maybe 7, with paint already in her hair. "How did you make all this happen?" Amelia thought about that question, about the chain of events that had led to this moment. An anonymous donation, an overheard conversation, a decision to show up at someone's office door even though she wasn't supposed to know his name. "I said thank you," she told the girl simply. "Someone did something kind and I made sure they knew it mattered. That's it. That's it. Never underestimate the power of acknowledging goodness." Richard caught her eye across the room and smiled, that smile that still made her heart race. Hope squealed and reached for a painting, nearly toppling off his shoulders. Marcus steadied her with the ease of an honorary big brother. The room was full of color and laughter and creation, exactly what they had envisioned that first day over coffee. That night, after Hope was asleep and the house was quiet, Richard found Amelia in her studio, working on illustrations for her new book. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't shown up at my office?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Sometimes. I think about how close I came to just sending a card. I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you're stubborn and determined and refuse to let it go. I'm glad you answered the door, always." He kissed her temple. "I will always answer the door for you." Amelia turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had started as an anonymous donor and become her entire world. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing my blog. For caring about those kids. For letting me violate your privacy. For building a life with me. For everything." Richard kissed her softly. "Thank you for showing up anyway." And in that moment, in their house on the hill, with their daughter sleeping down the hall and the future stretching out before them full of promise, Amelia knew that some rules were worth breaking. That anonymous didn't have to mean unacknowledged. That showing up, even when you weren't supposed to, could change everything. The community center continued to grow, serving hundreds of kids annually. The foundation expanded to 20 cities. Amelia published 4 books on arts education. Richard's company shifted focus entirely to community-serving projects. Hope grew into a talented artist herself, teaching classes alongside her mother by the time she was 16. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they returned to the community center gallery, now named the Eleanor Irwin Memorial Space after Richard's mother. They stood in front of the plaque that told the story of the anonymous donation and the woman who showed up anyway, and they remembered how it all began. "You have any regrets?" Amelia asked. "Not a single one. You." "Just that I can't go back and tell that nervous woman in the blue dress that everything was going to work out better than she could possibly imagine. She figured it out, though. She took a chance on something she couldn't explain and trusted it anyway. We both did." Richard pulled her close, and they swayed together in the gallery surrounded by children's artwork, by possibility, by the accumulation of 1,000 small moments of kindness and courage. "Here's to showing up anyway," Richard murmured. "Here's to opening the door," Amelia replied. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Eleanor Irwin smiled down at the family built on her legacy of love and art, and the belief that kindness should always be acknowledged, no matter how anonymous it tries to be. The years continued to unfold with grace and purpose. Richard and Amelia built not just buildings and programs, but a legacy of generosity that rippled outward. Former students from the community center went on to art schools and careers, always remembering the place that had given them space to discover themselves. Some returned as teachers, continuing the cycle. Marcus became an art teacher himself, taking over the main program when he was 25. At his hiring celebration, he told the story of the day Miss Amelia announced they were getting a new space, and how he had known even then that something special was happening. "This place saved me," he said simply. And it all started because someone cared enough to give anonymously, and someone else cared enough to say thank you anyway. That's the legacy I want to carry forward. Hope, studying art education in college, worked summers at the center and dreamed of expanding the model internationally. She had inherited her father's strategic mind and her mother's passionate heart, a combination that promised great things. On a Saturday morning 20 years after that first donation, Amelia and Richard sat on a bench outside the community center, watching a new generation of kids arrive for classes. Their hair had silver threads now, and reading glasses were permanent accessories, but the love between them remained as fresh as that first coffee shop meeting. "We built something good," Richard said, taking her hand. "We built something great," Amelia corrected. "Because you were brave enough to give and I was brave enough to show up." "Always show up," Richard said. "That's what you taught me. Always show up for what matters." A young girl walked by, paint box in hand, and smiled at them. She didn't know their story yet, but she would. Every kid who came through those doors learned about the anonymous donation, and the woman who refused to let it go unacknowledged. It had become the founding myth of the place, a reminder that connection matters, that kindness deserves recognition, that sometimes the best things happen when you break the rules for the right reasons. Amelia leaned her head on Richard's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the decades of partnership and love and shared purpose. "I'd do it all again," she whispered. "Me too. Every single moment." The sun rose higher, warming them, and inside the center, children began to paint, to create, to discover themselves through color and shape and imagination. The legacy of a mother who believed in art, a son who honored her memory, and a woman brave enough to show up at his office door anyway continued to unfold, touching lives in ways they could never fully measure. But sitting there together, hands clasped, hearts full, Richard and Amelia knew the measure didn't matter. What mattered was the showing up, the caring, the refusing to let kindness go unacknowledged. What mattered was building a life not on anonymous gestures but on the deep, abiding connection that comes when two people see each other clearly and choose each other anyway. That was their story. That was their legacy. That was their forever. And it had all started with a name on an anonymous donation, and a woman who showed up at his office door anyway.